that's where I want to start. And Trey, I'm going to kick this to you maybe to set the stage, right? So very, very quick overview. We have 2021 is when NIL officially becomes legal, right? But the NCAA really just said, okay, NIL is legal. You can pay athletes, or athletes can get paid, I guess. How you do that, or maybe some of the ways you shouldn't do that, like, we'll figure it out. But athletes can get paid. And so, of course, the free market went to work and guys started getting paid and girls started getting paid. And then the NCAA started kind of retroactively going, whoa, 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 partner, you can get paid, but not that way. And certainly not that way. And you for sure can't do that. And all of this has culminated into a ledger of sorts where the NCAA now wants to go back as many as 2 and 3 years ago to say, well, we know we said this was legal and we didn't exactly say you couldn't do this, but now we say you couldn't do that. And we're going to punish you for that. And that is where we pick up the story now with Tennessee uh, having an investigation just closed for the Jeremy Pruitt era and recruiting violations that for sure took place. The NCAA then opens up a new investigation against Spire Sports, a collective down there in Knoxville, and the Tennessee Athletic Department saying that in 2022, there were multiple recruiting violations, inducements that are not legal now that were used to woo five-star athletes there. You mentioned Chancellor Plowman's fiery retort to the NCAA. She said, and I quote, the University of Tennessee complied with the interim NIL policy and guidance as it was put into place by the NCAA, and neither the collective nor student athletes broke any rule or guidance document as they existed at the time any actions were taken, end quote. The complaint has long been that the NCAA doesn't have any sort of uniform standards. They don't have any quick timing. They never act in a timely fashion. And now Tennessee and Virginia are holding their feet to the fire there.
Yeah, and we see the lawsuit come out of that. We see I think a lot of people are taking the side of Tennessee in this space because of exactly what the chancellor said. We've just had no steady hand throughout all of this, right? It's been wild, wild west. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this show. And the NCAA, like Garrett was saying, just wants to come in now, a couple of years later, and say, whoa, 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 guys, no, you can't do that. Well, we were all operating under your standards where there weren't a lot of rules and there weren't a lot of things. And you guys just kind of fiddled and messed around until it started getting completely out of your control. You're also trying to throw a Hail Mary in the United States Congress right now. And that's, whether or not that works out for the NCAA, I don't know. But this is something that they had every opportunity to get in front of. They had every opportunity to, make guidance for this that everybody could have as clear and understandable and everybody could be on the same page, but instead they wanted to fight this for so long when the writing was on the wall that this was going to happen. Instead of sitting down together as member institutions and creating policy, the leadership of the NCAA just decided, maybe if we just don't pay attention to this, it'll go away. And now that's all coming to a head. And the schools aren't happy. The ones that give the NCAA power are the ones that are now questioning whether or not that power should exist.
Garrett, the key giveaway, as the Athletic writes from Plowman's letter, was a quote that says, quote, no member institution could follow future guidance prior to it being given, let alone interpret it, end quote. Um, the NCAA has, as we've said, has made its bed in kind of retroactively trying to say, no, 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 wait, I know you're doing it this way, and we didn't explicitly say you couldn't, but we would really like you to not do it that way. Um, Now it feels like after all of this backroom talk, and not even backroom talk, very public talk, that the NCAA is a joke of an institution. It holds no real power. That very similar to our currency. It's more like a social construct, and as long as we agree that it has value, it has value. That that very well might be coming to an end. In your mind, as you sit back, you look at Twitter melting down over this today. Does it seem like it could be founded in logic and reason that the NCAA might cease to exist because of this?
Well, the NCAA and what it's trying to do, I'm going back to the quote. We've done this a couple times on the show, but, he's going to make a return. It's like Captain Barbosa, right? The rules are more like guidelines. There's not really a lot that the NCAA can enforce. They don't have to enforce it when they don't want to. And this is kind of I think the irony of this whole situation is originally the model was just, hey, we'll let state law dictate how NIL runs at any of these, institutions. And so you'd be able to say like, oh, in the state of Texas, if they have a certain law about who can get paid when and how much they could get paid and who's allowed to contribute and this, that, and the other, that's how the original model worked, right? And so when you look through that, it was obviously uneven, and so then you had states changing laws, states changing the way they did things, universities trying to see what they can get away with, what they can't get away with. And at the end of the day, if you don't give like strict guidance and strict rules, then of course these teams are going to do what they need to find the advantage, right? It's a cutthroat game, right? These are coaches getting paid, millions and millions of dollars, and fan bases that are super, rabid and ready for a championship, and they want everything they can. And if their rival school's getting a guy and you're not getting a guy, then you're on the hot seat, and now it's time to cut you. And so you're going out there, you're going to find anything you can. You're going to say, can we find a donor who's got a little bit of money? Can we find this guy to give him a fake commercial? Can we find anything we can do? Up to the point now where it's all just collectives directly funding players. And look, if this is what you want, like, great. I have no issue with this if we're going to be public about it, right? If we're just going to be, open and honest and transparent and say, look, the desire for what we're doing in the NCAA, what we're doing in college football, the desire is just we're going to pay players and it's going to be, free agency, and we're going to do that. Great, let's do that. Let's structure it. Let's get something together so that there can be caps for teams, similar to like how there used to be no scholarship limits. Now there are scholarship limits. Let's do something like that with NIL, right? Tell them you only got this much money. You can budget it however you want to. If you need a D tackle, it's coming out of your pocketbook, right? And put a cap on it, right? That's perfectly fine. But the irony now is that with this whole situation starting off with the states, now it's the states coming back together and saying, well, hold on a second. You didn't tell me I could or couldn't do this. And now you want to come back like you were saying, Mitch, and after the fact litigate it. It almost feels like, when you were a kid and, your mom would like come up with something like, hey, you get off those video games until you clean your room. And you're like, well, I already did clean my room. She's like, well, I was told you to take out the trash. And you're like, you didn't tell me to take out the trash. You're just making something up because you want me to stop what I'm currently doing, right? This is almost what the NCAA is doing. It's just making up chores so that later on it can be like, no, I told you to do this, and that's exactly why you're in trouble. And so now it's it's leaving us, the kids, the other institutions, sitting around like you're just making stuff up because you're mad at us. Tennessee fans have to be livid, right? I mean, they just got for the McDonald's bags. Now they're going to get got for doing stuff that everybody else does. They got to feel like they got a target on their back. If I was a Tennessee fan, I would just be screaming at this point.
Guys, I just happened to have Paul Feinbaum on the radio yesterday when this broke, and oh my god, his first caller of the day was some Tennessee fan that was going back to Peyton Manning not winning the Heisman in
Oh
1998, and
no.
how much of a target they had on his back, and Paul, like, rightfully called him out for just being a loser, but it was hilarious. The guy had been banned from Madison Square Garden because of the Sweet 16 game. It was awesome, but, um all that being said, I want to make sure I say this because don't hear what we're not saying. I think it'd be easy to hear this show and think that we're coming away saying that there shouldn't be any rules. That is not what
Right.
we're saying. I think all
No.
three of us are
Yes.
very pro some sort of NIL regulation. It just needs to be mutually agreed on by everybody and written down on paper. This is what you can do. This is what you cannot do. And here's the punishment if you do what you cannot do. And we all agree to it, and we hold hands, sing "Kumbaya," and we just move forward.
Well, Trey, you're so right because look, and we've been talking about this for the last several years doing this podcast and following NIL. We've kind of gotten to watch it a lot more closely than maybe the average fan who just watches their team or kind of
Yeah.
follows along, right? We're seeing what a lot of these teams are doing. We're seeing what a lot of people across the nation are doing to get guys and get recruits and get guys in the transfer portal, whatever else. And one of the things that we've kind of said, I've said this several times, is this is going to self-regulate at some point. Like at some point, there's going to be a bursting point where the whole thing's got to pop, right?
Yeah.
Where donors are going to go and put up millions of dollars a year for 7 and 5. right? They're only going to do that so many years in a row before they realize it's not going to be a good return on their investment. And then the market will kind of level out. And we've been saying there need to be some kinds of rules. It's not going to go like this forever. But if there's no rules, I think the people that want to say doom and gloom and college football is over is kind of right, because if there's no rules, then you can just do whatever you want to. It just depends on who the NCAA wants to pick on that day, and which team they want to come after that day. And they can say, well, you can't go to the postseason for a couple of years or something like that. There need to be some set of rules. We want rules. We just want rules and then go, not let's try to enforce rules that maybe should have been. We can't go to the past. You can't go. It's not bad. Like, going back to my example, it's not bad that your mom would ask you to take out the trash. It's just the fact that she's asking you, now, and saying that she used to say it too. Like, that's not how it is. It's not how it's been. The NCAA is just lying at this point and saying, like, oh, that's against the rules. It wasn't against the rules. There were no rules. There were, again, like Barbosa, guidelines.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to use a very popular anecdote to describe this, right? The highway, where the rules and regulations for NIL are like the speed limit. That doesn't mean that everyone is magically going to go the speed limit once it's
Right.
enforced, but you know now how much you can reasonably get away with without being caught, right? You're in the
Mhm.
left-hand lane, speed limit 75, you're going 80, but you're just not trying to go 85 and be the
Mhm.
guy that gets pulled over, right? Everyone, listen, no one is perfectly going to play by the rules at this level of competition, right? I mean, there's
Right.
a reason why there's the saying, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Do I agree with that? No, of course not. I'm never going to advocate for cheating. But that
Well,
is that
ouch.
is the state of college athletics. Like, whether you choose to believe that or not, like, every single program is doing something to at least bend the rules, because that's honestly the competitive environment that we're in right now. So it's not really a commentary on that. What it is a commentary on is needing the speed limit to know where you are on the highway, right? You've got programs that, like Tennessee, were evidently going 85 in a 75, and they didn't know the speed limit was 75. Now, quick disclaimer, because I can hear the folks on Twitter, you guys, you morons, how did Tennessee not know that their, collective couldn't use a private jet to fly Nico from California to Knoxville? In this particular case, I actually think the NCAA and Charlie Baker have a reasonable case to say, hey, Tennessee, like, you
Sure.
did this thing wrong. The time to call them out for that was in 2022, not
Right.
2
Yes.
years later after the fact, when Tennessee's collective Spire Sports was very public about the fact that not only were they using all of these, toys to get recruits' attention, but that they were also going to spend 7, 8 figures worth of cash on recruits. This was not some sort of secret inducement. These were not secret flights that someone tracked the tail number on a plane and figured out, "Oh, wait a minute, hang on now. That's where this flight was coming from. That's who owns this plane." Spire Sports was very, very public
Right.
about this. Their case, and now the state of Tennessee and the state of Virginia's case, is that the interim NIL policy was so vague and convoluted that in the world of law and order, it was not black and white enough to now slap new rounds of sanctions on Tennessee, to hold these student athletes and the administration financially, in many cases, responsible for breaking rules that, in their mind, they were not able to follow because they didn't exist. That's really where we are right now.
Gracious him. How about that?